then, years later, the showrunner of Doctor Who will decide to make a modern era Harry Potter reboot.
Yep.
3.
It'll just be called Potter.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's gonna be how it happens.
It'll be like Sherlock in that it will like focus on like it'll have a title that vaguely recalls the title of one of the books, and it'll have a plot that like has a couple of elements from the plot of that book, but just remixed and it's like a completely different thing. And I would be totally down for that.
Me too. I really hope that happens. Sometime around whatever 2063 or whatever. Around that time. Or 2060, I guess, would be. I don't know why I'm matching this up to Doctor Who chronology or the timeline of the show. But yeah, around that time, whoever's showrunner better start making Potter. That's all I got to say about that.
I'm Tom Dickinson.
And I'm Louis Midas.
And this is The Cloister Room,
a podcast about Doctor Who and other things.
So what did you think about the Shakespeare Code?
I can't figure out if I like this episode because it's a good episode, or if I like it because it was one of the first episodes I actually saw.
My opinion is that it's a story that's a lot of fun if you don't stop to think about it for even a second.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty much that pretty much sums up my feelings too.
But I really do think it's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun, or it feels a lot of fun to me because it's just this. I don't know what it was like. This was when I say this was one of the first episodes I watched because I talk a lot about the first episodes I watched, but this was probably one of the first episodes I watched. I guess you could say after becoming exposed, because I talk about like the first episode I ever saw, and then I talk about like the first episode I watched live. But this is like one of the first ones that I was catching on reruns. After I'd been made aware of Doctor Who, and I think I was recording them. This would have been my freshman year in college, and I was recording them off of I guess Sci-Fi maybe that they were doing reruns. It was either Sci-Fi or BBC America. I don't know who had the rights at that point.
It would have been Sci-Fi.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought. So I'd been recording them off of Sci-Fi and just kind of watching them in random order, and this was one of the first ones that came up. So I was watching it in kind of this sort of analog, very low quality cable feed that I got in my dorm room, and so actually it was funny watching it this time because it was a lot better quality than that. But there's something about this I just really like this episode because it's on top of just it being one of the first episodes I watched. It's also a very good introductory episode in a way because it's the Doctor introducing Martha to time travel.
Yeah, that's true.
And so there's a lot of and it opens with discussion of like the implications of time travel, like, well, what if I step on a butterfly? And the Doctor makes some quip about, well, don't step on butterflies or something. And and it's this, and it kind of sets up the attitude towards time travel. And I think that because I was really devouring this, and it does kind of set up the sort of blasé attitude towards time travel that especially the Russell T Davies era kind of had. Where you could just go back, you could pop back in time, and there were consequences. Like, obviously you had to stop the bad guys or whatever, but like, stepping on butterflies, that was fine,
Yeah, and I like that he explains it in terms of Back to the Future.
Right. And that's another thing that was accessible to me because I'd seen Back to the Future, so that was a premise that I could accept. And it's a little bit, like time travel works in various different ways throughout different points in the show, but the idea of and I don't think anyone's ever actually like faded away like Martha describes it, but that's a basic that's a basic summary that, like, you know, time is in flux and things can change and the future's not set, and, you know, there's that kind of stuff. And so that's all kind of explained, you know, up front very bluntly, and it kind of works, you know?
Yeah, I really like the joke about it being the novelization, too.
Yeah, that was... I appreciated that. Like, I don't think I really appreciated that as full as I could have on my first viewing, because now I'm aware of, like, Doctor Who episode novelizations and things like that.
Well, I think I appreciated it at that point on the level of a Star Wars fan.
Oh. Yeah.
Because, like, for instance, the novelization of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, is completely incredible, whereas the movie is just not.
Right.
So, like, I had a very good appreciation for the fact that sometimes things in novelizations might work better and be more worthy of reference than things in their respective films.
That's true. Yeah, I've never actually read a Star Wars novelization, that is, so, but I do believe that they would be better, especially the prequels. I have to wonder, though, is there an actual novelization of Back to the Future?
I don't know. Let me see.
I want to know if there is and if the Doctor has read it.
What there is... So there is, not only is there a Back to the Future novelization,
okay,
there's also an ebook by Ryan North of Dinosaur Comics where he goes through chapter by chapter and reviews the novelization. That
sounds amazing.
And I don't know if he's actually reviewing the novelization or if he's reviewing some, like, sort of fantasy version that he made up. I don't know.
I don't know which I prefer.
But I do know that I actually own an ebook copy of this because I pledged to his one of his Kickstarters on a different topic, and this was included as a reward. So maybe someday I'll get around to reading his review of the Back to the Future novelization, which will give me a greater appreciation of the Shakespeare Code.
I guess it will. I guess it really will.
It kind of amuses me that, like, I bet the Doctor's into Back to the Future. I bet he. I wonder if he likes it. You know.
You think like he got done watching the original Back to the Future in 1985, and then he hopped in the TARDIS and then skipped to the next, so that he could see the next sequel.
Not before reading the novelization.
Oh right. Oh, obviously you got to do that.
What if the thing I think about these celebrity historicals involving writers is that, like, these writers' works will endure forever. And what if, like, the Back to the Future novelization, what if he's being serious there?
Right.
The novelization actually does, like, outlast the film.
That could be. Yeah, you never know.
I wonder if Gareth Roberts, who wrote this episode, has read that novelization.
Right, and he wants it to last forever.
He wrote the Shudder novelization.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go.
Which I thought was better than any other version of Shudder that I experienced.
Oh, that's right. I still want to read that. But yeah, so maybe, I don't know, maybe this novelization is just the bee's knees and we really got to get on this.
Could be.
But yeah, I wonder if there's, like, a sort of expanded universe kind of thing with Back to the Future, you know, like, are there characters that aren't in the film that got written into the novelization that are, like, beloved by hardcore Back to the Future fans?
Like, didn't, like, Telltale Games do a series of games? I wonder if they maintain continuity with the novelization.
They better. I mean, you know, what's the point? I mean, I think you have to assume.
Yeah, okay. I don't even know why I brought it up. Obviously they do.
Yeah.
I've got a question about the Shakespeare Code.
Okay, let's get to it.
What is the Shakespeare Code?
You know, right. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because, you know...
Is there a code in this episode?
Like, you mean like the Da Vinci Code?
Well, because I think that's what the title is trying to evoke, isn't it?
Probably. That was a thing at the time, wasn't it? Like the movie had just come out. Or very recently.
Yeah, and, you know, the book was still very much talked about.
Yeah.
So I feel like the Shakespeare Code, the title is like a deliberate attempt to evoke that. And I can imagine a version of Doctor Who where... like a Doctor Who story that is just like a pastiche of the Da Vinci Code.
Yeah.
Where they just follow clues in Shakespeare plays towards something. But this isn't it, and I don't know what the title even refers to.
Well, because there is there is what appears to be a code that is written into the very end of Love's Labours 1.
Well, that's like a code in the sense that the Konami code is a code. Like it's a cheat code, right?
No, that's basically true. Yeah.
It's not like a hidden message that is encoded.
That's true. You're right. It's completely misleading. Right. And on top of there not being an actual code hidden within, and you'd think that these witches would be more subtle about this. You'd think that, hey, maybe if they're going to influence William Shakespeare over a period of, years or whatever, maybe weave in this sort of incantation throughout all his plays. I mean, maybe they're not so up on their Shakespeare history, so they don't really know the order in which he's going to write plays and stuff. But surely, they can figure out, some sort of trajectory to sort of plot along and insert, little ideas, not like a bunch of random numbers in the final scene of Love's Labours 1.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about this story that makes no sense at all.
Right.
Because, like, the entire idea behind the Carianites, when the Doctor explains how their stuff works, is that their science, instead of using numbers, uses words. And they need Shakespeare's words because he's a master wordsmith. So what do they do as part of this plan? Well, they tell Shakespeare a bunch of numbers to put into his play. So they don't get anything from him. They just insert a bunch of numbers into his play. When I thought that, like, it's the literal opposite. Like, they use words instead of numbers, so they need to take them from Shakespeare. What they're actually doing is they're giving Shakespeare numbers to put into his play.
Right. Which the actors then speak as words, or at least I'm assuming, because as opposed to like digits.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, I actually had subtitles on, and in the subtitles they do appear as digits, which I thought was disappointing, because that completely ruins it.
I really do like that. That's that bit of acting where the guy is like trying to sell it as Shakespearean dialogue. I think that's pretty funny. But,
yeah.
But it doesn't make any sense.
No,
not to me anyway.
No, it makes no sense. Well, yeah, and that's kind of the thing is I'm really confused by a lot of the actions of the Carianites, because they obviously they were, I guess, brought back into reality because of Shakespeare and because of his words, but then and they seem to be riding off of his abilities to help them bring back their fellow Carianites. But then they sort of change tack and they sort of tell him literally what they need him to say. And I mean, I don't know, maybe, but then but on top of that, they go through all this work of, building the Globe Theater to match their specifications, and they make that guy go crazy because of it, or just, kind of to get him out of the way, which is interesting because they spend the whole episode killing people without really any reservation, but they'd rather make this one guy, whatever his name, I think is Peter Street or something, they'd rather just make him go insane, I guess. I don't know. That's it. Like, maybe they initially figured they could just make people go insane, but then they realized, nah, we got to kill people. But yeah, it's really weird because it seems like they're building up this really elaborate plan, and it's really kind of coming together slowly, and then just kind of insert gibberish, which is not at all Shakespeare. Unless, I guess the goal may have been, like, I don't know, they just needed Shakespeare to kind of, like, warm things up. Like, Shakespeare's just an opening act, and then the Carianites were just going to take over, and their stuff was the real deal, the stuff that would really work. I don't know. But yeah, it sort of diminishes Shakespeare in the end, because, it's built up as like, oh yeah, Shakespeare's doing magical things with words, but then, he's not good enough for the final whatever.
No, I mean, and like they all speak in rhymed couplets, and they're not like well crafted or anything. maybe it is to the Carianites. Like maybe it just doesn't sound as good in English. Yeah, it really reminds me of the Nintendo 64 game Banjo-Kazooie.
Okay.
Which, the villain is an evil witch who speaks in rhymed couplets.
Oh, okay.
And they're of roughly comparable quality, I think.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
That is what it reminds me of.
Yeah, so I could see how that would be less than satisfying when it comes to, like, these Carianites that are supposedly, geniuses when it comes to words, and words are what give them their power. Kind of a sloppy use of words. Maybe it's like the thing though is like maybe it's just the difference between like the powerful words and then like their every day-to-day words. Like they're just following like a less complicated sort of, I don't know, syntax or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. But no, like, I guess they are kind of like a shadow of what they could have been. They could have been, dropping these sick rhymes or whatever the kids are saying these days. And, but they're not really, it's not really that good. Although, we only see these 3 Carrionites, and it could be that these were like kind of the dullards. Like these were never the really big achievers. They just kind of were.
They were just the ones that happened to make it out.
Right. They were just these average Joes that just happened to slip through. They're not like the true wordsmiths. Like the Carrionites probably have like a pecking order where like the Queen Witch or whatever. It's probably like, amazing. It's just the quality of words. Everything she says is just this beautiful, rhyming whatever. The poetry is just so good it would like blow your mind. And these are just the sort of apprentices or whatever, and they just kind of scuttle around trying to throw together a mishmash of sentences and get by. And really, like, probably them rhyming is just borderline, like, all they can manage. So,
well, they do manage it.
I guess they do. So yeah, I feel like maybe we're just not getting the full force of the Carrionites. Like, the good ones are probably all locked away. At least that's how I'm gonna rationalize it.
All right, I'll buy it.
But so who are the Eternals? Because that's apparently who locked.
The Eternals. I mean, they're eternal.
Is this established in canon, or is this just something that's thrown out whenever they need some big earth-shattering event? Like this ancient mythology, like we were banished by the Eternals to the Nega Zone or whatever.
There are Eternals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we there is a story that revolves around Eternals.
Oh, okay.
In the classic series. That we will eventually get to watch.
Ooh, well then. So the Eternals are established.
Oh, they're established.
All right. Well, that's good. Yeah, this episode is one where you really can't think too hard about. But I mean, there was a lot of stuff I liked, and I don't know if this was intentional, but there were parts that kind of seemed like it was almost like a play. Like, and I don't know if this was intentional because it's obviously it's William Shakespeare. It's famous for plays. But like they're like in the opening scene, or the cold opening rather. There's that guy who's sort of playing his little whatever lute or whatever.
Yes.
And he's sort of singing to that one witch or Carrionite, and so he sort of comes in and then he's attacked, and then as Doomfinger and Bloodtide are whatever ripping him to shreds or something. The third one, I don't know if she gets a name. She does. She must, but I don't remember what it is.
I forget their names.
She sort of like turns like to the camera and sort of delivers this monologue, and then like cackles, and then there's the opening credits, which seemed like something that would happen. Like, I mean, there's no reason why any character would do that.
There's no reason why they're killing him.
Well, that's true.
I mean, none of this serves any purpose.
Well, I don't know though. Well, I feel like that opening scene is supposed to like be some kind of cautionary tale about like, I don't know, conservative values and like waiting until marriage, because like if you don't, you get eaten by witches. I mean, I feel like that's kind of where that's going.
Oh, okay. Well. As long as it's something, really reasonable like that. Yeah, that character's name is Lilith.
Okay, Lilith? Lilith. So the only one who doesn't have like a really grotesque name.
No, although that's a name from like, it's not biblical, but it's from like Judeo-Christian mythology. It's like Adam's other wife or something like that. Yeah.
So yeah, there is something going on there.
It's also a thing in Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is where I primarily know it from.
Okay, well, either or. I think you can refer to both of those pieces of media.
Yeah, in Neon Genesis Evangelion, it's a giant gleaming white humanoid that's cut off at the torso and has thousands of humanoid legs, tiny humanoid legs sticking out of where it's cut off.
Okay, yeah.
So that's my point of reference here.
I'll take it. That works. But yeah. So I mean, like, okay, so there's Lilith sort of delivering that monologue, but I mean, and then like, once again, I don't know if this is. I feel like there's not enough to go on that this is definitely what they were going for. But there was another point where later on in the episode where Shakespeare's handing the final pages to the actors so that they can go rehearse, and he's talking about, oh yeah, the queen could show up tonight, and then he sort of walks away, and as like an aside, he's kind of says to himself, like, as if she never does. And then I feel like that's like almost something you'd see on like a stage, like with a play. That doesn't. I mean, like that's kind of. I admit that's kind of reaching, because I mean, characters do that under their breath all the time, but I don't know, something about the way that was done kind of seemed like a play to me.
Well, it's kind of interesting though, because the classic series as opposed to the new series is a whole lot more play-like.
That's true.
Because like television in the UK was very like it came from a theatrical tradition, and a lot of TV shows were very much like high-tech stage plays, and Doctor Who was sort of in that vein, but like the new series kind of completely throws that overboard. And most things are like more like, big action movies. And I think this is actually a pretty good exemplar of that. Like there's a big set piece with special effects in the Globe Theater. And so it does have like this big epic film feeling that's nothing like a play. But I do agree that there are some ways in which like they put some of that back in, I guess you might say.
Well, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like, I can't remember if this is just how things were in Doctor Who at that time, because admittedly, I don't think I've really watched much of the third series since a very long time ago, and so I was trying to go through and think, how much of this is stuff that used to be how things were, and now it's taken this far different turn, with Stephen Moffat and stuff, where it doesn't really do so much of this anymore, and I was trying to think just how much is unique to this episode and how much is unique to the Russell T Davies era as a whole.
Like what?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I was mostly thinking of just the whole sort of play-like stuff, but also, I mean, I guess this kind of continues to pop up just in sort of campy sort of stuff in even the Moffat era, but like things like there's at the end, because there's in the beginning there's the priest who's like, the earth shall be consumed by fire or whatever, and the doctor says, it's global warming, and and they kind of move on, and then later on when the Carrionite thing is going down, the priest kind of reappears for no reason. He's like, I told thee, and it's just I feel like that we don't get as much of that silly stuff anymore.
Yeah, that's a little more Russell T Davies era, I guess I'd say. I don't think they do that as much. It's interesting though, that opening scene is very it's like a whole big like goofy joke where the doctor is trying to convince Martha about how the past is exactly like the present.
Right.
How, like, we got a water cooler moment and we got a global warming, and racism doesn't exist. There's no such thing as that, which is a little bit like that explanation. I mean, his notion that like, oh yes, there is a slave trade that's still active here, but just walk around like you own the place, and it works for me, so obviously it'll work for you. Like I don't think that's necessarily true.
Well, right. It's it's easy for the doctor to say he's this white guy. I mean,
exactly, and he's always been a white guy. He's never been anything but a white guy.
Right. So he has no idea. He's coming from this perspective where he has no idea what it's like to be, anything other than a white guy. And he's gonna just tell Martha, oh yeah, no, it's no problem.
Yeah, and they don't address it at all in this episode, really.
That's true, yeah.
I mean, they're like, Shakespeare makes some comments about her skin color, but there are no like social implications. Whereas I think they get a little bit more into that in Human Nature and the Family of Blood.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Even though it's not an especially like deep dive, but then again, I mean, you wouldn't really expect one.
Right.
It's kind of interesting, and it makes me kind of wonder how they would tackle that if if the Doctor were to be anything other than white,
right?
How they would tackle historical stories in particular.
Well, yeah, because I mean, that really would. Well, I mean, I would love to see them try to tackle that, because I think that would make for a lot of interesting stories. Because obviously, we understand the Doctor is this genius, but when especially in times where people were more racist, and they would be like, here's this, I don't know, black guy telling me about, just like mumbling something about Carrionites, I'm not gonna listen to him. Like why would what's he doing? So it's like it would be I don't know, it would be tough for the audience, I think, because I feel like, I mean, it would make me uncomfortable trying to watch that, and I mean, it would definitely provide for a lot of tension, though.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of I mean there are a lot of different reactions that you'd get in a lot of different places. Like, I mean, there are black characters in Shakespeare plays, and not all. I mean, people don't always necessarily dismiss them, but like the reaction to if a black Doctor were in this story, it might be something along the lines of, "Oh, what strange words from this like exotic man," or things like that. Like they would like try to like spin it into some kind of weird cultural misunderstanding or something like that.
Right, that's true.
If you know what I mean. Yeah. I don't even know if I know what I mean. But
yeah, no, I kind of get what you're saying, though.
But yeah, I'd equally like hate if they kind of tried to brush it off the way the Doctor brushes it off here.
Well, right.
It's just not a big deal. Let's just move on and get to the story.
Right, because that's kind of an insult to everything that minorities have gone throughout history.
Exactly.
You really can't just dismiss it out of hand, because I mean
under the present day as well.
Well, that's true. Yeah, absolutely. So I mean it would be just so weird and bizarre, and kind of off-putting to just sort of pretend like racial issues never existed and just sort of paint history as if it's always been okay and everything's fine. Because I mean, like, there is some value to looking at these things critically, because that's, I mean, why sugarcoat it? That's, I mean, there were a lot of problems, and this is not something that we should forget, So, but at the same time, how much does that get in the way of telling a story, And I mean, like, I don't know. I think it might prove difficult if every time the Doctor wanted to go to the past, he would have to face these issues all over again. That might get tiring, just from a story standpoint. But I just don't know. That would be a very interesting thing to see.
It would.
Yeah.
And maybe someday we will see it.
Yeah. Who knows?
I've got a question for you about this episode.
Okay.
What part of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows do you think the Doctor cried at?
I think it was I mean, I want to say it's when shit. I think it was when, was it Fred or George who died?
One of them.
One of them. I think it was when one. I think it was.
They're
when,
interchangeable.
I think it was when Fred or George died.
Yeah, I think it was when Dobby died. That's what.
Oh, you think? Yeah, that could be. I could see that. Because I bet. Yeah, I bet the Doctor had quite a fondness for Dobby.
Yeah, and later in this series, he looks like him a little bit.
He related to him on a personal level there.
Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things about that is that there's a general fan consensus that the present day from which Martha hails is 2008.
Oh.
Even though this aired in 2007.
Uh-huh.
Because, I mean, those dates are really, weird, and they're fudged all over the place, and they don't always make all that much sense. But the general idea, at least in the Russell T Davies era, is that, Rose meets the Doctor, the Ninth Doctor, in April of 2005, and then she gets brought back a year later.
Mm-hmm.
So in Aliens of London, which aired in 2005, it's 2006.
Yeah.
And from then on, there's a fairly consistent frame of reference that these events happened X number of months ago. This is what happened last Christmas. There are sequential Christmases, and everything has to be placed in that context. So if you're trying to sort of map those onto any kind of real-world timeline, Martha would be from 2008 after that Harry Potter book is out. I wonder if she's read it, and maybe, I mean...
Well, it's yeah, because the thing is, the Doctor just assumes she hasn't. Because he's like, wait till you read book 7, and he's talking about it like, obviously he's got some future insight. But yeah, if Martha's, well, because that's got to be true, because there's no wiggle room there, because him meeting Martha definitely happened after the events of Canary Wharf, right?
Exactly.
Like
yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, so that had to happen, and that, according to the accepted timeline, that would be 2007. Or
yeah, because that has to have happened after the Christmas invasion.
That's right. Yes.
Which in turn has to have happened after Aliens of London.
Yes. Right.
I mean, Martha also has to have happened. Meeting Martha also has to have happened after The Runaway Bride.
Right.
Because there's some Harold Saxon stuff in there.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. So this doesn't. Yeah. So either So I guess the easiest way to explain this is that the Doctor is trying to sound cool, like he's from the future, without realizing that she's actually read book 7.
Yeah. The other option is to sort of withdraw your demand that it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, for instance, the unit dating controversy about how whether the unit stories happened in the 70s or the 80s. I think with The Day of the Doctor, when you're told that, those events, it's mentioned in a really brief offhand way that those events happened in the 70s or the 80s, depending on the dating protocol. Like, that's just sort of like a formal withdrawal of the notion that unit dating ever has to make sense again.
Right.
So, I mean, you could take that same attitude and apply it here as well.
Right.
Or you could just, like, say maybe Harry Potter book 7 came out a year later in the Hooniverse.
Well, right. Because we're assuming, who knows, maybe these massive, alien invading events that happened in the UK, this sort of delayed JK's writing for a while. And it could be that, she was freaked out by these aliens and decided she needed to take some time off and, I don't know, get her affairs in order or something. And so she was delayed in writing the book because of the alien invasions. So the Doctor's hailing from an alternate timeline where he was able to act. Well, actually, no, he's a time traveler, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, so he's read a future book, I think we have to say.
Yeah, and maybe J.K. Rowling rethought some of the plot developments, and he's crying about something we don't even know from our version.
Yeah, there you go. I bet it was way sadder. But yeah, it's well, yeah, and the weird thing is that when this episode was broadcast, the seventh, I'm assuming the 7th book hadn't come out yet. I haven't looked at the dates. But but that's weird because, and that would have been a really funny joke at the time, like, the Doctor's read this book that none of us have read yet. But it sort of loses its impact over time because, this is a book that a lot of people have now read. And so they're kind of in on the joke too, I guess. And so, like, the only person in this story who's not in the joke is Martha. Well, and I guess all other characters who haven't read Harry Potter. But I mean, it's not like they have the option to read Harry Potter. So, but it seems weird that's like a very contemporary joke that's gonna lose a lot of relevance.
Well, in the 8th Doctor novels.
Yeah.
In the last novel in the 8th Doctor novels series, entitled The Gallifrey Chronicles, which was published in June of 2005.
Ah.
So this was actually after the 9th Doctor series started airing.
Huh.
It's stated that the Doctor has a full set of 11 Harry Potter books.
Huh.
So by this point, it was well known that J.K. Rowling was only ever going to write 7 books in the series.
Okay, so, so, well, we don't know if, who knows, maybe J.K. Rowling is going to decide there needs to be more books written.
Or, well, there's also, in a short story, I'm cruising the TARDIS Wikia, if you can't tell. In a short story, in a short story collection published by Big Finish, because they used to publish prose short stories as well as audio dramas. There's a reference to the book Harry Potter and the Half Moon Dentist by P.Q. Rowling, a descendant of J.K.
Okay, sure, So I'm yeah, right, you think the Harry Potter series is done, but I mean, come on, I think if everything has taught us anything, people love sequels, and the Die Hard movies they keep making more of those, I mean, JK's gonna start making Harry Potter books again.
Or PQ.
Right, PQ, yes, Descendant PQ. They're gonna take up the torch. Right, it'll be like Sherlock Holmes,
Exactly, yeah.
And then there'll be fanfics, and then,
I think there's already Harry Potter fan fiction. Did you know that?
I'm sure that I did know that.
Okay.
I feel like I knew it somewhere in my mind.
There's fan fiction of a lot of things.
I think that's probably true. It's funny because here we see the psychic paper not work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because the Doctor takes this as a sign that that Shakespeare is a true genius. Mm. But we, the audience, have always seen a blank psychic paper. Is this supposed to be kind of like a subtle compliment to the audience? Like, hey, you guys are all geniuses too, because the psychic paper has always been blank for you. And
I guess so.
Right? I felt good about that.
Or maybe it's for the director or the cinematographer.
that they're the geniuses there?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right, because they're the first to see it. We were only getting what they saw. So,
right.
Yeah, so, right, so it's not so much a compliment to us. They're filtering it out for our benefit, I guess. But they're the first ones who didn't see it. And they're the real geniuses here. So yeah,
it's true.
So yeah, it's a compliment. I think it's a compliment to probably the director and the production staff and whatever props person designed the psychic paper. That's a compliment also to them, probably, unless they actually saw something. In which case, I guess they're not geniuses. So, what do you think Venusian spearmint tastes like?
I don't know. It sounds like something that he's probably had it for a while because it sounds like something the Third Doctor would have.
Right. He picked it up,
back when he picked up like Venusian Aikido, Venusian karate, and Venusian lullabies.
Right. He also stopped by, the Venusian CVS and got himself a Venusian toothbrush with Venusian spearmint. Right, and it's not wrapped or anything, so for all we know, he could have been using it. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
I don't know if I would trust that toothbrush, to be honest. Like, is Venusian spearmint supposed to taste anything like normal spearmint?
That's a very good question.
Because, are we supposed to assume? Because is spearmint an actual plant? Is that? I feel like it must be.
I mean, mint is a plant.
Mint is a plant.
Spearmint may well be a variety of mint.
Oh yeah, or it could just be some invention that we're gonna call it spearmint, but it's actually, I don't know, high fructose corn syrup.
Spearmint is a species of mint native to much of Europe and Southwest Asia.
Okay. So I
Though
guess
its exact natural range is uncertain due to extensive early cultivation, which is why they don't know that it's on Venus as well.
I guess not. So yeah, okay. So I think we have to assume this is something that was like, supplanted from Earth or transplanted from Earth, brought to Venus, and then there they sort of cultivated their own species, I guess, over time. So yeah. it must stem from that. Okay.
Or it could be just a marketing term.
Right, it's not really Venusian. It's
like I live in Rhode Island, and in Rhode Island we have like a special Rhode Island kind of hot dog that is called New York System.
New York System?
Yeah, New York System hot wieners.
Okay.
And it has nothing to do with New York.
You don't import the water from New York or something?
No, it's just that back in the 30s when people in Rhode Island started trying to make hot dogs, they just thought that they could sell more if they called it New York System.
Not New York hot dogs, but New York System.
It was New York. I don't really understand what led them to do that, but I mean, the New York thing was based on Coney Island because people liked Coney Island a lot, and hot dogs were apparently a thing there. But then the people in Rhode Island started making hot dogs their own Rhode Island way, and so they referred to it as New York System. And these are still, a pretty big Rhode Island thing. You can go out and get, a couple of New York System wieners with a nice cold glass of coffee milk. And So yeah, like maybe Venusian spearmint is just like a Mars thing.
Yeah, that could very well be. And yeah, they're just trying to corner the tourist market or whatever. Earthlings visiting Mars and be like, hey, you don't have to visit Venus also. Just come to Mars and eat our Venusian spearmint.
Or like people from outside of the solar system.
Right, who don't know anything about the solar system. Only what they vaguely remember from, their one semester in solar system history.
Exactly. And so like one planet's as good as another. I mean, they're all the same.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's probably nowhere nearly as built up in my mind. Like I'm probably building it up in my mind way more than it actually is. It's just probably not nearly as good. I would probably be disappointed if I ever happened upon Venusian spearmint.
Well, give it a try.
Yeah, you're right. I shouldn't just reject it outright.
You might find yourself quite surprised.
Maybe I will.
And refreshed.
Right, that's the key. Maybe Venusian spearmint actually contains like the properties of a Venusian lullaby, where like it's this calming and soothing thing.
Yeah. Did we watch a story that had the Venusian lullaby in it? I forget.
Right, the God Rest Ye Merry.
Yeah, the God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen.
Yeah, I think that was in the Curse of Peladon.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So yes, I'm familiar with the. So yeah, if they could somehow get "God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen" or the tune of "God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen" into a spearmint somehow, maybe it's like that middle school science experiment where like if you play music to plants, they'll grow differently. Like maybe they just played Venusian lullabies to these spearmint leaves, and they grew to be Venusian spearmint.
Yeah, so they were just grown in much of Europe and Southwest Asia.
Yes.
And they were just singing God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen.
That's got to be it.
There's a character whose actions I don't understand very much. Well, there's a few characters whose actions I don't understand very much.
Yeah.
But one of them is the Master of the Revels. Are you familiar with that character?
I don't think so.
Well, he's the haughty guy with the beard who ends up drowning on dry land.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't really understand what the problem is, what his problem is.
Well,
like after Shakespeare announces that Love's Labour's won, will be played the next day, and then he bursts in and says, you haven't approved that script yet. All scripts have to be run by me. And then that's his job. It's a reasonable concern. And Shakespeare's like, I'll get it to you tomorrow. And he's like, no, I don't work to your schedule. You work to mine. I was like, okay, well, that's a little unreasonable, but it's still within the bounds of like, I don't know, like the way it's basic professionalism,
Right.
But then he goes, Love's Labour's won will never be played. I was like, well, that's a little excessive, isn't it? I mean,
well,
I don't really understand why he said that.
Well, I don't know. To me, I kind of looked at this as kind of like an analog. Well, here's the thing. I think like maybe he may have been concerned that, Love's Labour's won was going to be too violent and just not educational for kids. And I think this guy is supposed to be like some kind of analog to Michael Grade.
Or Mary Whitehouse.
Oh, Mary Whitehouse, yeah. So I think that's kind of, I think that might be where this is coming from. I think we're supposed to understand Shakespeare's struggle to be, the 80s writers of Doctor Who's struggle, to try and keep the show on the air.
And then what happens? It goes missing.
That's right.
That's why we have all these missing Shakespeare plays.
That's right. This really is the perfect analog to Doctor Who. And I think, Doctor Who is on par with the quality of Shakespeare, so I think it all works out.
Yeah. I think that line follows trailer logic.
Yeah.
Because I do believe that line was in the trailer.
You could, yeah.
And I can't imagine any reason for that line to be there at that point other than to appear in a trailer. It's like the line in the 1996 TV movie where they're on a motorcycle and Grace says, "Great, I finally met the right guy, and he's from another planet." Which there's no reason for her to say that line at that point in that scene, in that story.
Right.
So the only reason it could possibly exist is for a trailer. So Love's Labour's won will never be played, and it was in the trailer for this episode. So
well, there you go. Yeah. So that's and I mean like that that line also spurs into action Lilith to kill him, and that is how it is revealed to the Doctor that witchcraft is happening. So maybe I mean, like, I'm just trying to really justify this from what I imagine the writer's perspective was, but I mean, like, it doesn't really. I mean, it's definitely one of those over dramatic kind of lines that's supposed to just, pique interest in, why will this never be played? It's because Shakespeare didn't fill out the proper paperwork. But that is kind of ridiculous in hindsight. But I mean, like, much of this episode is equally ridiculous.
Yeah, I really did like it overall.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like, I was thinking to myself, wow, all of this is just so ridiculous, and it's just, but I liked it. I did. Even there was like a scene where Lilith has brewed like some sort of potion, and she's at the window behind Shakespeare, who's writing the play, and she sort of blows this green mist that then floats over to Shakespeare and then like shoots up his nostrils, and he like goes cross-eyed, and it's so ridiculous, but I love it. I don't know, it's just so great.
Yeah, I like the the Expelliarmus and all that big stuff at the end. I think Dean Lennox Kelly as Shakespeare is very good.
Yeah,
there's just a lot of fun stuff going on.
It is
some good like historical jokes.
Yeah, and there was that the thing about Shakespeare using those various quotes that the Doctor kept throwing out. That's all good fun, and it's just really, there's a lot of fun just stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
But does Shakespeare ever actually use Sycorax in anything? Like,
yeah.
Really?
That's where that word came from.
Oh, okay.
I forget where it is. Maybe Macbeth or something.
Ah.
I don't know. It's in The Tempest. Sycorax is in The Tempest.
Because I was wondering about that, because it seemed like a weird thing to throw in, because that was missed on me, because I've never read The Tempest. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I think I have just enough familiarity with Shakespeare to appreciate a lot of the references, but not so much to like get hung up on historical authenticity.
Well, right, you're at that sweet spot.
Right, I took one class in Shakespeare.
Right, that's the limit. Otherwise, you get too uptight about things.
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess I took one Shakespeare class too few, because I have not taken any, and I guess that doing so would really help me with this episode. But I mean, like, I got some stuff, so I feel happy about that.
If you Google Sycorax, you know how Google is now like scraping content from Wikipedia and other sources,
yeah,
to try to give you like the answers to your questions instead of being a search engine.
Yeah, right.
The little info box it has on Sycorax says Sycorax is an unseen character in William Shakespeare's play The Tempest, is a vicious and powerful witch, and is the mother of Caliban, one of the few native inhabitants on the island on which Prospero, the hero of the play, is stranded. And the picture is a Sycorax from a Doctor Who comic. And it's holding a flaming skull and shouting ... to the church of the Sycorax. And then there's a little thing that says to be continued.
That's awesome.
So someone who was interested in Shakespeare and didn't know about Doctor Who I was just Googling Sycorax for its Shakespeare-ness, might potentially be very confused,
right,
by that panel from the comic The Widow's Curse.
Right, they must imagine that Shakespeare at some point got into comics and started writing comics. At least that's what I would assume.
Sycorax rock.
Is there some place you can report that? Like, is there like a report button on Google that like, hey, you've got the wrong picture?
No, maybe, I don't know.
But
I like it. I like it the way it is.
Right, you wouldn't want to spoil.
Oh, there's a feedback button.
Oh, well,
yeah, and it lets you go wrong. There's question mark in several places.
I am 100% sure that some pedantic Doctor Who fan has already reported it to Google.
Yeah, well, I just want Google to be a search engine.
Yeah, that would be nice.
So I'm fine with it, like self-sabotaging. That's good for me.
Yeah, Right, it seems like Google has kind of strayed on its path.
Yeah, I mean, the point of Google used to be to get you off Google.
Right. Now it's to keep you on for as long as you can and divulge as much personal info as you're willing to give accidentally through your searches. So I love how that one witch or cigarette or not Carrionite. I love how that one Carrionite is named Doomfinger, and then like they make a big point of like talking about like, oh yeah, go doom him with your finger or something like that, and they go on and on about describing what she's got to do in terms of her name. I just wonder how, under what circumstance, like whatever Mother Bloodtide gets to like Tide Bloods or something. Like, does that ever happen? Like, is that like if they need like a heart attack, they sort of like, oh yeah, go Tide the Bloods or something.
Yeah, I bet it's really interesting when she gets a chance to do it, but it probably doesn't come up all that much.
Probably not.
I mean, and like they want to kill someone, and then she's like, "Would you like me to tide their blood?" I'm like, I mean, that seems a little needlessly complicated. Let's just doomfinger them.
I think, yeah, she'd probably takes a back seat a lot. Yeah, that's really unfortunate. I bet she's really disappointed about that.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point when you got a one-hit KO like Doomfinger?
Exactly.
So this was partially filmed at a real fake Globe Theatre.
Really?
Yeah, in London, there's a recreation of the Globe Theatre.
Really?
That is used for Shakespeare performances. And the Globe Theatre sections of it were filmed there.
Oh, well, that's neat.
It is pretty neat. I think it looks really good. The sections filmed there look really good. I think in general this is an episode that looks a lot better than, say, the episodes in Series 2 did.
Yeah.
I think there's a pretty big like aesthetic leap forward in Series 3, which is one of the many reasons why it's my favorite series of the new series. But
yeah, and it's I don't know if it's something with like if they were using different cameras or whatever, but it seems like in Series 2 a lot there was very often it would seem almost like fuzzy, and I don't know if that's if they got better cameras or if things were just lit better.
Well, I think it might have to do with the lighting, but I think it also has to do with the filmifying process they used on the tape.
Ah,
yeah.
Huh.
So I mean they have like a post-production treatment they do on the raw footage that makes it look like film, basically.
Right.
And I think the one they're using in Series 3 is a lot better than the one they're using in Series 1 and 2.
Oh, okay.
I mean, Series 1 looks like it was created 10 years before this.
Yeah. It's funny because that's kind of... Because I got into Doctor Who after, Series 1, 2, and 3 had aired. So yeah, it's funny because going forward, I always sort of... That was kind of... Like, that quality was kind of how I envisioned Doctor Who. And then when I go back and watch Series 1 and 2, it's always kind of like this stark contrast in terms of quality. But yeah, it's definitely noticeable. Series 3 is kind of like the standard, I guess, that sort of is set and is maintained going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it had at the time, it had like what I guess I'd refer to as like a British TV look.
Yeah.
That I didn't really have any understanding of the technical reasons for it, but when you're watching like a British thing, you just know it's different from American stuff. Whether that's a combination of like the video and the conversion from PAL and all that stuff just gives it a different look and feel.
Yeah.
Whereas I think nowadays, I think it's kind of advanced to the point where that distinction doesn't make as much sense because, I mean, TV looks a lot more varied now than it used to on both sides of the pond. And B, like, it's just the quality of the post-production they're doing and, like, the cinematography and everything, it just looks so much better.
Yeah, it's funny because you definitely can generally tell when it's a British show, but, like, I don't even... It could just be that I'm so used to Doctor Who that I don't notice it, but I really don't notice, or I don't think about the fact that Doctor Who is a British show. Like, I mean, that's not... And that could very well just be... Like, especially... I'm thinking especially like since it switched to HD, but I mean that could also just be because I've been watching it for so long. And another thing is I think it was in this series that they seemed to make the TARDIS a lot brighter because it seemed like the interior before was all these kind of like dark sort of bluish green colors, which I mean I don't think looked very good. Like it didn't produce very good quality images of like the characters, and now I think it was starting in Series 3 that it's much brighter and you can sort of see the interior of the TARDIS a lot better. At least that's what at least in my opinion I think you can. I kind of like that more.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But yeah, I kind of like that, and so in that regard, I guess I kind of miss this TARDIS because with the the Series 5 TARDIS was the same, where it was pretty brightly lit, but it seems like they've kind of moved more towards the dark sort of interior in Series 7. So,
oh yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I kind of miss the well lit TARDIS.
Well, yeah, I mean it used to be all gleaming white.
Yeah, that's right. It used to be very well lit.
How did you feel about Rose in this story?
I kind of was. It's really out of place here. I mean, I know that this is kind of an ongoing thing for the Doctor to have this sort of pining for Rose, and this sort of gets in the way of Martha gets really annoyed that the Doctor keeps bringing up Rose, who is apparently this awesome companion. But I mean, this is it's kind of. It takes what would otherwise be a really continuity-free episode and sort of bogs it down by this sort of continuing storyline that the viewer may not know anything about. And I mean, in that sense, I'm kind of bothered by it, and I kind of wish, and at the same time, I kind of wish the Doctor would just sort of get over it. I don't know.
Well, I think the thing about the first two series of Doctor Who is that they're very much sort of rooted in Rose's perspective.
That's true.
To the point where New Who was Rose, essentially.
That's a good point.
And I remember watching the first two series of Doctor Who and waiting for the third series and being so curious to see what they were going to do, because I was thinking by that point I had seen some classic Who, but I was like, the new series, I don't even know what it is outside the context of Rose, because Rose was Rose was a companion who got a lot more focus on her and her story and her concerns and stuff like that than a lot of classic series companions ever got, and that was a defining thing.
Right.
So I think it makes some sense that now that they're transitioning away from Rose, that her presence would still be felt.
That's true.
The notion that a character, and a very important character, would be written out of the show and then never mentioned again. That doesn't make. I mean, that makes sense in the 50-year context of Doctor Who, where he has lots and lots of companions and then they just leave.
Right.
But it doesn't make sense in the 3-year context of New Who, where you have an important part of the show just disappear.
That's true. Because normally when a character leaves a show, that's a big deal, and usually people associate that kind of event to a drop in quality. Where this character left House or whatever, and House has never been the same since that character left. And but with Doctor Who, it's kind of funny because I'm talking about this in the context of having seen I don't know, Series 7 all the way through to the end, and we've been through a ton of different companions since then, or since this, and so yeah, at the time this would have been a big huge thing. This would have been earth shattering that there was this character who used to be so important to the show, and now that character's not there. So I guess in a sense, I feel like it was definitely better at the time, and it was definitely something that was very important, I guess, to establish at the time that this is that this is a big deal to the Doctor, because I feel like modern audiences who wouldn't have been as familiar with the classic series would have been confused by the Doctor just being willing to sort of move on without really even batting an eye. So I guess in a sense it is important to establish that this is really bothering the Doctor. And I mean, I think at the same time, the Doctor did have this really tight bond with Rose. So I mean, it does kind of make sense that he'd be upset. And this, and their separation was this kind of big sad thing. So yeah, at the same time, I do definitely think that it would bother him. So I guess it does make sense. It's just that from a broader perspective, I think it hasn't quite aged as well.
Yeah, because it was very much. I mean, at the time, Doctor Who had 2 main characters, and one of them left.
Right.
And it had a few recurring characters, and all of them left. I mean, it had Mickey, it had Jackie, and it had Pete. I guess you'd also say.
Yeah.
And they left when Rose left, and I mean, all that's really left is Jack. And I guess there was some kind of sense at the time that I think his return had already been kind of announced. I don't really remember that well. I think so. But anyhow, that was so I mean there was that was still going to be present in the show, but it's a very huge change.
Yeah.
Like I mean, like I recently finished catching up with the most recent season of Community, in which 2 characters left the show, and they made a huge deal out of both of them.
Yeah.
It's like something that it's something that you kind of expect from a TV series, although I don't know whether the way they handled it was the best possible way of handling it.
Yeah, I mean, there is kind of making, the main character of the show kind of all mopey and sad. That can kind of drag things down, because if they're all mopey and sad, then, the audience kind of mopey and sad too. And Doctor Who's kind of supposed to be about having fun adventures in time and space, so that kind of bogs things down. But I don't know. I can't really imagine a different way for them to do it, so I guess I can't fault them for the way they did it.
Well, I think actually Moffat did pretty well after getting rid of Amy and Rory.
Yeah.
Where they're still like they're still like important to him, but his main reaction isn't to like constantly be overlooking Clara because he misses Amy. It's like he goes and pursues a very different kind of interaction with Clara that's not really the same thing as what he had with Amy. And so I think, and he like continues to carry Amy's glasses with him,
right?
Like as like a memento,
right. Yeah.
So it's I feel like I mean, what the route they chose to go with Martha is like Martha feels like she's being dissed because she can never replace Rose,
right?
Which I mean, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's probably not necessarily the best choice, but it I think it worked all right.
Yeah, I think that it definitely worked to establish the idea that companions are going to leave, and like, yeah, the Doctor's going to miss them, but the show's going to carry on, or something. But yeah, it was kind of like a Band-Aid that had to be ripped off eventually, and so I feel like they made a big deal out of it the first time, and then they're gonna make less of a deal of it in successive times, and that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Rose was a Band-Aid.
Rose was a Band-Aid. Queen Elizabeth is in this episode.
She is. And it was a little bit jarring at first because I knew Queen Elizabeth was in this episode, but I was imagining the 50th anniversary Queen Elizabeth, who is, or I'm assuming was a different actress because she looked different.
Oh, yes, a much younger actress.
Right.
In the 50th anniversary.
Right. So that was a little jarring for me. I don't know why, but like, because just in my mind, I'd replaced the idea of Queen Elizabeth with the 50th anniversary one.
Like in the special edition of Return of the Jedi, where Hayden Christensen is there at the end of the movie instead of the guy they had before.
Exactly like Hayden Christensen, yes. So yeah, that was weird. And it's also weird because now we kind of know. Like we pretty much exactly know. We know more than the Doctor at this point, which is technically true whenever you watch an episode of a Doctor Who that happens before later episodes. But, it's kind of interesting to sort of see, and it's funny because I forgot that this whole Queen Elizabeth thing was not a Moffat invention, and I mean, like, of course it wasn't. Like, I mean, this was something that cropped up in the Russell T Davies era and was not in a Moffat episode, but it just seemed weird to me because I had completely forgotten that this was just something that had been done by some other writer. And I mean, I guess that sounds terrible that I sort of attribute these cool things that I like to Stephen Moffat, as opposed to the writer who actually thought of them.
Well, this one, I mean, this episode is written by Gareth Roberts, but I don't know if this particular scene was his idea.
Oh, yeah.
But I know this introduces the notion that the Queen and the Doctor are sworn enemies, which I don't think that exactly fits with what we found out later.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know if there's any swearing that happens. But I mean, I guess you're right. So she's just kind of upset that the Doctor said he was going to come back and didn't. I don't know. Maybe is that all it took to get on Queen Elizabeth's bad side, to promise something to her and then not follow through?
I mean, I guess she did appoint him the curator of the Undergallery.
That's true. That's a position that you don't appoint lightly.
Certainly not.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, maybe the Doctor just didn't show the proper amount of respect to that appointment. Yeah, actually, so she appointed him and then became his enemy, or was this? Did she become his enemy and was really pissed at him for a while and shot arrows at him, And then, like, in her later years, it was like, well, he probably just forgot. And then,
I think she appointed him and then became his enemy.
Okay.
Because she appointed him as a direct result of the events in The Day of the Doctor.
Oh, that's right.
But then, it was only much later that, I guess she ended up deciding maybe there's something we haven't seen yet. I don't know.
Yeah. That's got to be. But, okay, so I guess I don't know anything about the curator of the Undergallery position. I guess once you're appointed that position, you can't ever be unappointed. Is that
presumably not?
I guess it's got to be it. Or maybe she kind of lost the paperwork, or just forgot that she'd appointed him, and so even after she became enemies, she didn't remember to unappoint him.
Or maybe this is a Zygon.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it's within that timeline, so
Yeah, because Queen Elizabeth says she killed the Zygon Elizabeth.
Yeah.
But maybe she only thought she did, and the Zygon Elizabeth was only grievously injured.
Yeah.
But eventually, after the real Queen Elizabeth appointed the Doctor curator of the Undergallery, the Zygon Elizabeth came back and took revenge and then took over the throne.
Yeah.
That's probably what happened.
Yeah. I don't know European history well enough to refute it, so I think there's wiggle room in there where that could have happened. Yeah, it's like the Daleks are never really defeated. I mean, how can Queen Elizabeth be so sure she killed that copy? We never saw a body.
It's not my least favorite episode written by Gareth Roberts.
I'm not sure I know what else he's written.
He wrote The Unicorn and the Wasp.
Okay.
He co-wrote Planet of the Dead with Russell T Davies. And he wrote The Lodger in Closing Time. And he also wrote a bunch of Sarah Jane Adventures and Doctor Who novels, comics, and audios. He's fairly prolific in that regard.
Huh. Is there any hint that he might become showrunner? Because he sounds like he could be.
I don't know. Maybe he's the stealth candidate.
Maybe.
He's been hidden in plain sight.
Yes. Yeah. See, I really like The Unicorn and the Wasp, which is the only one I would think might be lower in my opinion.
Well, I think Planet of the Dead that he co-wrote with RTD
you think
is pretty low.
Really? You don't like Planet of the Dead that much?
No. Not at all.
I kind of like Planet of the Dead, though.
Really?
Yeah, well, I guess I shouldn't. Maybe I shouldn't reveal that until it comes up in the randomizer. But yeah, no, I think or at least I have. Well, once again, this was very shortly after I'd become a Doctor Who fan, which is probably also why I like The Next Doctor so much. But yeah, so this was like that was very early on in my watching episodes as they were airing fandom, and so yeah, I was into that. Like I thought that was like, I mean, it could very well be I could go back and strongly dislike it, but I don't think I've actually watched it since I first watched it. Possibly. I don't know. Maybe I'll hate it now.
Maybe. I hope so.
Right.
I hope you hate it.
Right.
I hope it ceases to give you joy.
Right. If
you're deriving joy wrong.
I feel like I must be. Well, but even so, I don't know if I could call this my least favorite Gareth Roberts story, even in spite of liking all the other stuff. I don't know. I don't know.
I think my favorite Gareth Roberts story, Shada novelization.
I
just really like that Shada novelization.
I guess I really need to read it. Well, and I really do want to read it, so I guess I should get on that. Is it on Kindle? I'll buy it right now.
It's on Kindle. There's also an audiobook version of it read by Lala Ward.
Ah, ooh, maybe I should get that.
And John Leeson as K9.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Well, he's the wrong K9 for that story. But...
well, but he's the better K9, really.
I would never dispute that. Gareth Roberts is also getting his own series at Big Finish.
Oh, is he really?
Well, there is a series that's soon to come out called The Fourth Doctor by Gareth Roberts. That's the name of the series.
Ooh, okay.
And it's a series of adaptations of his Fourth Doctor novels.
Ah, interesting.
Of which he wrote, I think, 3.
Well, I guess this Gareth Roberts guy, he's really up and coming here.
I guess. Big Finish considers him a marketable name at any rate.
I think that's my prediction is he's going to be the next showrunner. I've just decided that right now.
That's a bold prediction. I think I'd be happy with that,
Yeah, I think that could be. I think Mark Gatiss is just a smokescreen for Gareth Roberts. Maybe Mark Gatiss isn't real. Maybe he's just a pen name
for Gareth Roberts.
Yes, like Robert Galbraith.
Gareth Robert Galbraith.
Exactly.
Galbraith Roberts.
It kind of works.
Hey, Lewis.
Hi.
I think it's time to randomly pick the next story.
I think you're right.
All right. I'm glad you agree.
Yeah.
I'm glad we have this checks and balances thing going on.
You know. One hand washes the other, something.
Yeah, so let's figure out the story that follows up the Shakespeare Code.
Okay.
Not that anything could really follow up the Shakespeare Code. But
No. Except maybe gridlock.
Yes, indeed. All right. So the random selector is being primed. It is doing its thing. And the story is The King's Demons.
It sounds familiar, but I don't know anything about it.
It's about some demons.
Oh.
The King's Demons.
Oh. Well, those aren't just any regular old demons.
Yeah.
Which doctor is it?
5th.
Ooh.
Yeah, The King's Demons.
Ooh.
It's available on Amazon for $9.32.
Oh, that's surprisingly low.
Yeah. So it's not one of the ones that you have to pay like $100 to get.